Look, it's great to have you here. I've been watching your content for years and looking forward to talking about the book as well. I guess first I wanted to ask, since you're in the States, how do things feel there? How important, in your opinion, is this election to crypto and blockchain and maybe even finance in general?
Yeah, I think that politics is very unique in that everyone cares about it. But if you look in their day-to-day lives, it's very hard to see where it shows up. And I'll give you a couple of examples. Housing affordability in the United States right now is atrocious. It's some of the worst it's been in 40 or 50 years. The federal government actually can't do that much to solve the problem. It's much more reliant on your local city council or your local government. And so things like regulation are standing in the way, but the federal government doesn't necessarily have oversight on that. And so I joke sometimes and I say, who's on the city council may be more important than who's in the White House. And so I do think that some of that is playing into it. But also, if you look at the two candidates, these two candidates are much more similar than maybe people would recognize on its face. They obviously have different policies, but their approach to this election is very similar. What I mean by that is they're both populist candidates, so they're going after the same exact audience. They're trying to convince that kind of independent voter base or undecided voter base to sway. They have very specific tax cut policies. Usually it's the Republicans that get labeled as trying to use tax cuts, but the Democrats in this election in particular, they're trying to do a $25,000, first-time home buyer help. They're doing a $6,000 child tax credit. They're looking for a $50,000 tax benefit for small business owners. So tax cuts is this huge thing and it's going after from a populist perspective. On top of that, they actually agree on way more than I think we thought they would agree on at the beginning of this. They both want a southern border wall now. They both want no tax on tips. And so you kind of see this playing out, and what you realize is, okay, that's policy related. Their approach in terms of going on podcasts, watching Donald Trump talk to Theo Vaughn about cocaine obviously goes super viral. And then you watch Kamala Harris talk to Alex Cooper on Call Her Daddy, and that goes super viral. And so what I've taken away from this entire election cycle is the world has changed. This is not our grandparents' politics anymore. This is not kind of traditional appointment viewing television that we live in. And so instead it's, shows like yours, it's various podcasts, it's social media. That is really driving the conversation. And so when you are engulfed in that world, everything feels fast. But you have to remember that, it was less than 4 years ago, Donald Trump was in the White House. Less than 4 years ago, Joe Biden took over. Less than 4 years ago was the global pandemic that literally locked people at home, both in the United States and abroad. And so a lot of stuff can change in a very short period of time. When you think of it from an investing perspective, how do you just ignore a lot of that noise and realize that sometimes the best thing to do is just do nothing? Kind of make your bets, hold them for a long time. And so I think that is the, kind of challenge of our generation is how do you stay informed on current events, but avoid going crazy? I got a lot of friends who became insane, paying attention to all the politics. And I think that's really where, kind of we're headed now is you want to know what's going on, but also how do you not let it affect you?
Politics has changed so much, when I was a kid or maybe when you were a kid where, it wasn't as newsworthy. It wasn't in our social media. It wasn't entertainment. It was something that would happen every now and then. I kind of remember the Ross Perot debate. I remember little bits here and there, but it wasn't something that really qualified as entertainment. It wouldn't infect people's heads, but now it really is placed there. Some people say that we kind of project on our politicians that they're going to solve all our problems. And maybe you kind of alluded to that with the fact that maybe it has a lot more to do with local politics and maybe even yourself with your own actions. Do you think that it has become something that it really isn't as far as entertainment and maybe a solution to all your problems?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. And I think, maybe the first thing is I literally wrote a book specifically talking about all these different life lessons. But if I had to sum up one common thread, it's that people have agency. You get to do the things that you decide to do. And so whether that is, concepts like luck not being real or hard work being important, it's all about you having the agency. Now, why do people not feel like that is, kind of the path forward? It's because everything around them, the kind of digital environment is telling them you're not in control. We are going to tell you what to do. We are going to program your mind. We are going to show you how bad the world is. The best point in history to live is in the future. The second best time to live is today. And I constantly remind people that we live in the safest, most prosperous time in human history today. It doesn't feel like that when you read the internet or you watch TV or you look at what the newspapers are writing. And so that agency gets sucked out of people's brains. And instead, we start to say, who is coming to save me? And so if you look at the United States specifically, we have become much more of a welfare state than we previously were. You see that not old people. I mean, people expect in different nation states for older people to become dependent on the government. They run out of money. They don't have retirement savings, all these kind of social safety net programs. We also expect maybe, the people who are in the most dire situations among us, homeless, people in poverty, et cetera, they begin to depend on the state. In the United States of America, there are people who are young, healthy, who should be productive. They're depending on the nation state. And so anytime that you get a situation where people who should be productive, who should actually be creating their own income, who should be, doing things in society, they become part of that welfare state. You have to ask, one, what is the psychological, kind of development that got us to that point where they think it's okay and they're actually looking for the handout? But then two is, what's happened in the government where we're actually handing this money out? And so I think that the United States is, kind of following the classic trajectory of a nation state who we have the position of luxury where things like depression, things like welfare state, all have become the norm. And I always point back and, I saw this clip of 50 Cent talking about depression being a luxury, and it just seared in my brain. He said, where I come from, we don't have the luxury of being depressed. Everyone is so focused on what is the next thing that I have to do to get food on the table so my kids can eat tonight. And again, I didn't grow up in that environment. And so it's hard for me to understand exactly what he's talking about on a day-to-day basis. But this idea that as a country in the United States, we are so fortunate, we're so prosperous that people can stand around and complain about stupid things. Go back 100 years. We didn't have that luxury. People had to work. And so in a weird way, our success is actually beginning to kind of collapse on itself and lead to some of the absurdity that we see in the media.
Hey, I know investing in crypto is scary. It takes a real leap of faith because there are so many scams, rug pulls, and bad actors out there. It's a dangerous business, which is why 95% of people lose all their money. Well, that's why I created the London Real Investment Club, so you can access the hottest deals on the planet and use the crypto bull market to create the generational wealth that you deserve. Join my team of over 100 people from around the world that are making millions of dollars behind the scenes investing in blockchain, AI, Web3 games, DeFi, Bitcoin, and more. Don't miss out. Click the link below to book a call with one of my team now. But hurry, this bull market will end soon.
I know investing crypto can be scary. That's why you gotta join the investment club. Pull the trigger. Let's do this.